D&D number 13, For Unto Us, in Jesus' name. Wow, I can't believe I'm already recording. Book number 13. Let's do a little bit of the front of book matter, meaning keeping tabs on their ages and a few other things. Alrighty. Eric Kino turned 70 on June 14th, and his wife, Shelley Adams Kino, was 65 on October 27th. Their little babies, Emmanuel is 2 and will not be 3 until May. Noah is same thing, Angelina, Abraham, and Nate. Ricky Kino turned 52 this past May. Brianna Adams Kino turned 49 on August 27th. Eric the third, young Eric, was 21 on December 14th, and Taylor turned 17 on August 30th. Then Mark Adams turned 40 on October 29th, and Bella Adams is 39. And JoJo turned 21 June 30th, this past, 6 months ago. Logan turned 20 July 17th. M was 4 on December 11th. And we're holding the place there because Bella is pregnant. So there will eventually be another baby to tell you whose birthday it is. All right. Joey Adams turned 38, August 22nd. Breeze Adams is 31. Sophia turned 7 in May. I think Breeze Adams' age is wrong. She's not that much younger than Joey, is she? I'll have to check that out. Highlight that. Sophia turned 7 in May. Kelson turned 4 on December 16th, and Ledger turned 3 on November 3rd. The Wallace family, June Flower Kino, is 28 as of last March 15th, so her birthday's coming up. Cameron Wallace is 30, and Elijah was born on November 9th. The Lee families, Justin Lee is 66, and his wife Lori Lee is 52. Jason Lee is 58, his wife Angel Lee is 55. Jensen Deal is 29, and Kimberly Lee Deal was 26 last February, and little Jason J. was born on November 26. The Davis family, Jeff Davis, will be 44, was 44 on November 8th. Mackenzie Daly Davis will be 43 soon on February 3rd. Daniel Davis is 12, Jeremy Davis is 11, and Scarlett was born on November 24th. In the Brooks family, Jewel Brooks is 42, Jordan is 19, Josie is 10, and Jamie is 8. In the Keith family, David Keith is 45, Carol Keith is 40, Melody was 18 last April 26. Philip Keith is 16, and Lyle Keith is 14. On the East Coast, Chris Coley is 30. Marissa Daly Coley is 29. Toby Nash is 55. Caro is 53. Gracie is 26, or will be 26 in February. And Jody turned 22 this past July. In the Stewart family, Chaz is 49, and Lisa turned 46 on May 15th, last May 15th. Charlie will be 15 on February 11th, and Matthew will be 13 on January 20th. Erlen will be 8 on February 9th, so all their birthdays are coming up. And little Jonathan Jones and Lachlan were born on November 1st. John Apple is 50, Jody Apple is 48. Jake Apple will be 22 coming up in February, so not too long. And Milena Stewart Apple was 21 on November 22nd. In the Tanner family, Keegan is 49, or will be 49 on February 8th. Or will he be 50? I better check that out and make sure I've got that right. Lizzie turned 42 last April 10th. Heather will be 25 on January 10th. Rose turned 24, December 25th. And so did Violet. Daisy and Lily turned 23 on December 19th. Gabe turned 18 last June 14th. And Iris turned 3 on December 10th. And Isaiah and Gentian were born November 25th. Nolan Sawyer, Heather's fiance, is 28. CJ Blackman, Violet's boyfriend, is 28. Rebecca Murphy is 36, and her son Peyton was 18 last July. Lucas will be 15 on January 9th, and Dalton will be 39 on January 5th. Jericho Jones, Rose's boyfriend, is also 28. It's a good age, I guess. Let's do some scriptures. On John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. Isaiah 7:14, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. And Luke 2:11, for unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. John 1:14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Here's a note to the readers. I've never focused an entire book on the Christmas season. So much has been written about Christmas until staging a scene for Christmas becomes almost a cheesy Hallmark movie. In some of the promptings and whisperings that I received from the Holy Spirit as I wrote this book, I was urged to mention all the holiday warm fuzzies, but more to dwell on what Jesus taught us. Though he didn't teach us about the celebration of his birth in particular, still he did teach us how to celebrate. The main thing he taught us was to love God and love one another, and one more very important thing, to serve. He knelt down and washed the feet of his disciples. He taught us to serve and love unceasingly. He taught us to forgive. He taught us to stop being so critical. But he also taught us to go and sin no more. And so I was given scenes in the book that focus more on these things. God has no problem with us having celebrations. He was all about the festivals and celebrations with music and dancing. The trick is to teach our children without getting caught up in the greed and the wanting and the hungering after things. We need to have our eye always on God. We need to make sure we don't get our priorities all out of whack. So I'm looking forward as I write this book to the things the Lord has to teach me. This process, these books, God showing me that he's mindful of little old me has been the biggest blessing of my life. And thank you, Jesus. And here's a quote from Roy L. Smith, who said, he who has not Christmas in his heart will never find it under a tree. Special note, on May 24th, I was given a strong message from the Lord to quickly and almost urgently get all the books up on my website where they can be downloaded, free of charge, of course. I didn't even know that I could do that. He told me to research it, and sure enough, I was able to learn how to do it. I argued a bit. I questioned God about book 12 because it hadn't been through the editing process, and book 13 because I hadn't even finished writing it yet. But he told me to get them up regardless. I don't know why. Maybe there's someone who needs the messages in the books immediately. Maybe I'm about to die. Maybe Jesus is about to come for his church. I picked that one. Whatever the reason, I am being obedient. I will continue to write the last few scenes of this book if I'm able, and I will add them as I go. May God be with you and bless you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. As of this recording, I feel like I have written the final scenes of this book. By the time I get to record the end, I'll let you know if that was true. And here's a special note from the author. In this book, about the music listed in the book, I felt moved by the Lord to give you links to some of the music mentioned in this book. The links are YouTube links. You probably have your own music sources. Either way, listen to the music when you read that section to feel the Spirit even more. Chapter 1. It's December 5th, 10:17 p.m., Thursday night, Kino Plantation Manor, Pine Forest, Georgia. If you will recall, Book 12 ended in this same exact place, at the Kino Plantation Manor, as Ricky comforted Bree and they prayed together, and Hannah and Taylor were sitting up on the steps listening. It had been a crazy night. What started out as something as wholesome as caroling on the courthouse steps had turned into a rescue mission for a young girl who'd known nothing but misery for several years. Taylor sighed as she sat just behind that young girl on the staircase of Kino's new home, and together they watched Taylor's father comfort her mother. Their love for each other and strength in hard times gave Taylor herself much comfort. Abused and broken, little 13-year-old Hannah Brown sat on the giant staircase in the old but beautifully renovated plantation manor. She felt comforted by the presence of her rescuer, Taylor Kino, who sat right behind her. Hannah had not been able to sleep and had started to roam the house, but stopped when she saw Taylor's parents and heard their conversation. Mrs. Kino was sad, crying over Hannah and what had happened to her. Mr. Kino was so kind and was trying to make her feel better. He hugged her and began to pray with her, and it was cool. Hannah closed her eyes and listened to the end of their prayer. When they finished, they both looked up toward the steps where the two girls sat. Ricky stood and pulled Bree up. They smiled at the girls and motioned for them to come down. Taylor took Hannah's hand and they headed down the steps. "You two couldn't sleep?" Ricky asked. "I woke up and Hannah wasn't in bed, so I came to check on her," Taylor said. Hannah looked down. I'm sorry. I'm not used to sleeping at night." "Why not?" Taylor asked. Hannah frowned as she thought how to answer the question. "Well, I was afraid of Carl at night, so I stayed awake at night, and when he went to work in the morning, I went to bed and slept. And then I woke up and I would clean the house and make his dinner before he gets home." Bree sighed. "Then what did you do after dinner?" "I cleaned up the kitchen, and then I had to do my schoolwork." "I thought he didn't let you go to school," Taylor said. "Yeah, but he said he didn't want no stupid girl to teach his kids, so I had to do online school." "He has kids?" Taylor asked. She shook her head. "Not yet, but he said he could wait until I was old enough." Taylor's mouth opened wide, and Bree's eyes filled again, and Ricky cleared his throat. "So you had internet at the house where you stayed?" "I guess so. He called it a hotspot. I don't know a lot about computers and stuff, but I know that sometimes he'd get real mad at me when the... try that again. He called it a hotspot. I don't know a lot about computers and stuff, but I know that sometimes he'd get real mad when the internet wasn't working because he couldn't see his movies. But he disconnected the internet while he was gone during the day, and that's why I had to do schoolwork at night. He watched me so that I wouldn't try to get anyone to help me." "Did you ever try to run away while he was gone?" Taylor asked. "I couldn't." She glanced down at her bruised ankles. "He kept me chained up." "Then how did you go to the bathroom?" She shrugged. "The chain was pretty long." "Okay, hon," Bree said. "That's enough questions for tonight. You girls have to be up early in the morning, so let's get you some tea so you can relax and sleep." "Why do I have to be up early?" Hannah asked. "Well, sweetie, the police are going to be here early to question you, remember?" She nodded. "Oh, yeah. And then we have to go to the hospital and see a doctor who just wants to check you out and make sure you're well." She nodded sadly. "Can Taylor come with me?" Bree grimaced. "They'll only allow one person to go with you, and that person can't be a minor, so I'll go with you. I promise I'll stay right by your side the entire time." Taylor suddenly hugged Hannah. "It's going to be okay. Come on, let's drink some of Dad's special tea, and then we can go to bed, and I'll talk to you until we fall asleep." Hannah nodded and followed her into the kitchen. They sat at the island, and Ricky set 2 cups of tea in front of them. Hannah sipped it obediently. Taylor frowned. Dad, it needs more honey. Why does everything have to be so sweet for you? He asked teasingly. She smiled. Because I'm sweet, and it takes a lot of sweetness to keep me this sweet. Ricky grabbed his daughter's hand and kissed it. Well, I can't argue with that. He squeezed some more honey into her cup, and he looked at Hannah. More honey? She nodded. Thank you. My pleasure, he said kindly. The girls finished their tea and headed back up to bed. Once they were in the room, Taylor smiled at Hannah as she patted the bed. Come on, Hannah. You'll feel sleepy soon. Hannah climbed into Taylor's bed. They lay side by side. This must be what it feels like to have a younger sister, Taylor said. Hannah turned on her side to look at her. And this must be what it feels like to have an older sister. Taylor turned on her side so they were face to face. She reached out and touched Hannah's cheek. Hannah, I'm sorry for what happened to you. Hannah only nodded. Things will get better, Taylor said. Hannah smiled. Do you remember your real dad? She nodded. I think so. Was he nice? I'm not sure. I can't really remember, but he didn't hit me. But my mom and dad did fight. They yelled and screamed at each other. I mean, they fought a lot. My mom was always mad as long as I can remember. She got into fights with everyone. What do you mean, everyone? Like your dad and Carl? Yeah, and the neighbors. And she actually hit my grandma a few times. And she got in a fight with the lady at the grocery store. And she had to go to jail because she got in a fight with a cop. Why do you think she was so mad all the time? Well, she got mad mostly when she couldn't get her pills. Oh, okay, I understand. They lay quietly for several minutes. It was Hannah who finally spoke. Taylor? Yeah? Thanks for helping me. You're welcome. I'm so glad I noticed you. Me too. She yawned. Taylor? Yeah. The lady who wants to be my foster mom. Do you know her? Yeah, her name is Jody Apple. She's just the best lady ever. You'll really like her. She's just like my mom. Does she have any kids? Well, she has one, but he's all grown and he's away in the military. She and her husband are really good friends of my mom and dad, and they live at the inn. The inn? Yeah, the Pine Forest Country Inn. They run it. It's like an old-fashioned hotel. It's right next door to my boyfriend's house. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Taylor sighed. How long have you had a boyfriend? About 8 months. Is he as nice as he seems, or do you fight? We never fight. He's the best guy in the whole world, and he's waiting for me to graduate from high school so we can get married. Oh, wow. How nice. Do you go to Pine Forest High School? No, our family actually lives in California. We're leaving on Saturday morning to go home. Oh. But don't worry, Miss Jody will get you a phone, and we'll FaceTime every day if you want to. She'll get me a phone? Well, I think she will, and Gabe will be here until after Christmas, so you can talk to him too. And he has 5 older sisters and a little baby sister who's about to turn 3, and a new little baby brother and sister who were just born. They're so tiny and cute. You're just going to love the whole Tanner family, and they're going to love you. Hannah yawned. That sounds nice. She sighed and yawned again. Taylor? Yeah. I'm a little bit scared. Does that seem stupid? No, Taylor said softly. I think that seems pretty normal after what you've been through. But don't worry, Hannah. It's all going to work out. And Miss Jody and Mr. John are so nice, and they're going to take such good care of you, and maybe Sheriff Stewart will find your real dad, or maybe not. But even if he doesn't, we're your family now. And you're going to be okay because we always take care of everyone. So try not to worry. Okay? When she didn't answer, Taylor raised her head to peer at her. She was asleep. Smiling, Taylor turned off the light and closed her eyes, said a prayer for Hannah, and finally drifted off. New scene. December 5th, 8 p.m., Thursday evening, the Winston House Restaurant, West Hollywood, California. Young Eric watched as Jordan and his wife of, and I'm sorry, young Eric watched as Jordan and the wife of the man they were having dinner with headed to the ladies' room. He turned back to see that Mr. Raymond Turner was no longer smiling. He'd been quite friendly and jovial most of the dinner, but young Eric's father had warned him that these people were snakes and to be very cautious. Mr. Turner was an ultra-rich movie investor. He'd fronted a lot of the money to the entertainment house that was producing Eric's movie. "So," Mr. Turner began, "you really think marrying this girl is the thing to do?" Eric blinked at the quick change of subject and demeanor and mentally put on his armor. "If I didn't, then I wouldn't have asked her." "Eric, let me be blunt. It appears you don't need my permission. The facts are this girl is a nobody. She's pretty enough, or she can be if we get some experts to doll her up, but I understand she comes from a very low-class family. Her mother works at a dental office. Her father tried to rape her." "Well, you have your facts wrong. Her mother is about to open her own restaurant, and her father died of cancer when she was a kid." "Okay." "Her stepfather tried to rape her. Same thing." "Yes, and as a kid, she stepped up and had him put in prison because she has strength of character." Yes, yes, I know the story. And I know you ended up killing the man, and that publicity was actually good for you. However, what I'm trying to get at is your fan base is going to want you single and available." "Excuse me, Mr. Turner, but I'm not single, and I'm not available, and I don't really care if that displeases my, quote, fan base," he said, using air quotes. "I cannot and will not allow the movie industry to dictate my personal life. My real fans know that and will respect that. That girl, as you put it, that beautiful woman of God, as I put it, is the most important thing to me, other than the dear Lord himself, and I am going to marry her." The man sighed heavily. "Well, maybe you could put off the marriage for a few years. Let the fans have the hope that you're available." "I proposed to Jordan live on social media. Millions of people saw me do it, and millions of people have congratulated me and wished us well. I will not mislead anyone." "Eric, let me give you a little insight on how to get along in this world. Sometimes you have to be a little dishonest in order to navigate the waters. In Satan's world, yes, but I'm not of this world. And in my world, you never lie, or at least you try not to lie. I'm not perfect, but I at least try." Mr. Turner went in another direction. "Okay, so don't you think you're too young to marry? I'm surprised your father supports you in this life decision, or does he?" "Of course he does. My father and I are very close. We understand each other, and he's the one who let me know that there's nothing wrong with marrying young when you know it's right, and it's right. Listen, son, don't take offense. I'm only trying to help you." "To help me what? What exactly is it you're trying to accomplish?" "Well, I've been approached to help finance several more movies for you and a few others at the studio. It's a big investment. I want a big return." Young Eric nodded. "Well, that's what you do, right? You invest, you take risks, you make money. That's your thing, and it seems you do it well, and you understand that there's a risk. Well, I am not responsible for your risk. I contracted to do a movie, and I fulfilled my obligation. I am fulfilling my obligations to promote the movie. All I owe anyone here is my best professionally, not personally. You see, Mr. Turner, it's not always just about the money. Surely you know that." "Well, what if I told you that unless you do as I ask, you will find it difficult to get another movie contract?" Young Eric gave a soft laugh. "I realize that you think you're threatening me with the power you have with your contacts and money. First, even if you held all the cards, you wouldn't be able to sway me. I don't care about money. I certainly don't care about your money. It holds no power over me. You want to measure your power and money against my family's power? Good luck. Because our power doesn't come from our money. It comes from God. We don't need you in order for us to continue to make movies. If I want to do another movie, I'll do another movie. I don't need you. I would think you would understand who it is you're talking to and who you're dealing with." The man nodded solemnly and smiled. I'm sorry, Eric. I didn't mean to insult you or get you all riled up. Eric smiled. You think this is riled? I'm not riled. You haven't seen me riled, and you don't want to, he added, mimicking a line from the movie. Touché. Speaking in terms that you understand, Mr. Turner, the return you're about to get from the resurrection of Elijah Beck is going to be satisfactory. It might even be your biggest return yet. Why then would you alienate the person or the people? Because my father's fight choreography is a big part of what you're about to make. Why alienate the people who are about to make you so much money? Raymond Turner sighed. You'll have to forgive me, Eric. I wanted to see if you'd cave, if you'd allow me to push you around and dictate your life. You're young, and I wanted to see what you're made of. Your beautiful fiancée is a lovely girl, and I wish you all the best. And I think you're right. We're about to make a fortune. Because you, young man, are totally bankable. Eric's mouth pressed together. He didn't know whether he could believe him or not, or if he simply saw he couldn't win and conceded. Still, it was a good lesson. Don't trust the world. Trust his own family, his proven friends, and mostly Jesus. He looked up as the ladies came back. He smiled at the tall, beautiful blonde wearing the red dress and the timid smile. He rose to pull out her chair and then did the same for Mrs. Turner. My, what a gentleman, Mrs. Turner said. No wonder all the girls in the world are simply gaga over you. Young Eric shook his head, leaned down, and kissed Jordan's cheek before he sat back down. The rest of dinner went by without a hitch. In the car on the way home, young Eric was abnormally quiet. Jordan glanced up at him. Are you okay, Three? He glanced down at her and smiled and took her hand. I'm good, babe. You're awfully quiet, she said. He sighed. Sorry. I was just thinking over some of the things that were discussed tonight. Which things? He shook his head. While you were in the bathroom, Turner brought up some things. I really don't want to talk about it, but it made me feel, I don't know. I guess I feel suddenly tired. Jordan sighed. And you don't feel like you can talk about it with me? He shook his head. I am talking to you about it, but I don't want to rehash exactly what he said right now. Okay. She smiled and squeezed his hand. So, one more day and your family will be coming home. He nodded. Do you miss them? Sure. She eyed him. 3. Are you hungry? He looked over at her, surprised by her question. Are you? She shrugged. Well, I'm not complaining. The food was really tasty, but there wasn't a whole lot of food. I could really go for a giant bowl of ice cream. He grinned. Me too. We've been so good the entire week. If I promise to not seduce you, can we go back to your house, pick out ice cream, and cuddle together? He sighed and then smiled at her. Well, how could I turn that down? She giggled. I know, right? A while later, they pulled up the long drive and stopped in front of the house. Eric helped her out of the car. She stopped and smiled up at the home. What? He asked. She shrugged. I think I've missed being here. Funny, but it feels like home to me. More than my apartment, and even more than my mom's home. Well, we spent a lot of time here together, he said. Some good times and some hard times. She nodded. Every minute I've spent with you is a good time. He smiled. How about the night you arrived here after you were attacked? Oh, well, it started out bad, but you made it all better. Okay. How about when you were here and I was being held in Mexico? I was here surrounded by your family, and they were so strong, and they helped me so much. Being here, it's really comforting. He put his arm around her. Come on. They went inside and went straight upstairs to get into something more comfortable. He gathered her a t-shirt and some sweatpants and took them across the hall to her room, then drew a deep breath when she asked him to unzip her dress. He did as requested and then placed his hands on her shoulders. I thought you said you wouldn't seduce me, he murmured. Oh, well, sorry. My arms are sore from the team workouts and throwing so much I'm out of shape. He rubbed her shoulders for a minute. When she tried to lean back against him, he gave her a playful shove. No way. Get dressed. I'm not feeling real strong right now. She giggled and he left the room. 5 minutes later, they were in the kitchen, digging some very hard ice cream into bowls. Then they covered the ice cream with chocolate syrup and whipped cream and took the heaping bowls into the den and curled up on the sofa together. Jordan put a spoonful in her mouth and moaned in pleasure. Oh, wow. This is just what I needed. He watched her eat and had to smile. How could he be so much in love with her so quickly? He couldn't remember life without her. He certainly couldn't imagine life in the future without her. He waited patiently for her to finish her bowl of ice cream, and it took some patience because the bowl was very full. Finally, he took her bowl from her and placed it on the end table, took her in his arms and kissed her, and when he pulled away, he licked his lips and grinned. Oh, wow. This is just what I needed. She giggled. He wrestled her down then and kissed her with all the love he felt. It would take a long time to get it all out, but he was willing to work at it. New scene. It's still December 5th. It's 10 p.m. It's Thursday evening. Now we're at the Regent Theater, Newport, California. Logan took Melody's hand as they walked out into the cool December evening. She shivered, and he stopped to take her coat off her arm and put it on her. Better? He asked. She smiled at him. It'll do. Well, what would you rather? I'd rather us go back to your grandparents' music room and make use of that love seat. For some reason, I'm always warm when I'm there. He chuckled. You used to be kind of shy, Mel, but you're becoming more and more daring. Oh, does that bother you? Not at all. It makes me happy. She shrugged. I like the way you make me feel. When I'm with you, I feel safe and secure and warm and, well, not pressured. Well, that all sounds like good things. He helped her into the car and went around and got behind the wheel. Are you taking me home now? Well, you have to work in the morning and I have a class. And then we have the big Hollywood party, she said excitedly. He smiled. Are you excited about that? Aren't you? He shrugged. It could be fun. With you, it will be fun. I finally found something to wear, but I had to get Miss Shelley to help me. Well, I can't wait to see. Do I just seem so silly and childish to be excited to go to a fancy party? No, you seem innocent. Oh. Melody, some of these people are not the warm, fuzzy people you might be used to. Actually, most of them are not. And there will be a lot of drinking and probably drugs. Well, why did you accept the invitation then? Because young Eric has to go and he felt like he needed some reinforcements since his parents won't be here until Saturday morning. Is JoJo coming? Yes, he's been invited. He's famous, so the hosts want him there. And who's hosting? It's actually the parents of Eric's co-star. Who's his co-star? Lucy Bardot. Oh. Well, for some reason, I thought it was a guy. But Lucy Bardot? Wow. I think she's so cute. I loved her in that movie where she plays the blind girl. Logan nodded. Yeah, she was good in that. You don't sound so enthusiastic. He sighed. Well, young Eric says Lucy is all about Lucy, which isn't that strange in Hollywood, I guess. Like most in the industry, Lucy believes the world revolves around her. She's very caught up in her own image, and she acts as if everyone worships her. Well, maybe everyone does, Melody offered. The way the people in the world worship celebrities, I mean, they become obsessed. Right, exactly. And to be honest, people feel that way about the Kinos, and like about Gabe and Taylor, Melody added. Yes, you're right, he said softly. And they're starting to feel that way about you. He nodded. Fair enough. The difference is getting people to be obsessed with us or worship us is not our goal. It's not that we're after. It's not what we're after. Our only goal is to serve God and to bring more people into the kingdom or to heal his children or, like we just did, to feed his sheep. So, like, I want people to like my music and to buy my album because I want them to be touched and changed by the music and the words I write. I don't care about being famous. But young Eric says Lucy and most other big celebs have giant egos. They are narcissists. They want to be worshipped. That and make lots of money. Their goal is being rich and powerful and leading opulent lives with the fanciest houses and most expensive cars, ridiculously extravagant jewelry, name brand, overpriced clothing. That is their goal. So, when your album comes out, are you going to give it away for free? He chuckled. You're suggesting that I'm being hypocritical? She smiled. I'm just playing, what is that called again? Devil's advocate? Yes, you're so smart. He laughed again. So answer the question, she prodded. No, I won't be able to give my music away for free, though one day I'd like to be in a position to do that. No, the album will be worth a decent price because I've put a lot of time and work into it, and because the people who produce the album have to be paid. And I have to be able to make a living too, off of what I'm doing, or I won't be able to continue to touch people's lives. I'd have to go get a real job, he said, putting the last part in quotes. Because I need to be able to support myself and one day my wife and children. As a man, that's part of the role I need to fulfill. He smiled at her. And she blushed. It was too early in their relationship to be thinking along those lines, though she had to admit it was a very nice fantasy. She nodded at him and went back to the original subject. So, Lucy Bardot is like what you describe, a money-loving, power-grabbing narcissist? Yes, but she's worse. How? Well, she's also a predator. She uses her status and money and position to take advantage of people, and in young Eric's case, to take advantage of him personally. How? How does she do that? Well, when I say personally, I mean really personal. She's always putting her hands on him. She makes him very uncomfortable, and I mean on him, like she's grabbed him, Logan said, cupping his hand over his crotch. More than once. It's Eric's first movie, and I guess she thinks he'll put up with it. She's been acting since she was like 6. She's a pro. She knows better. Uncle Ricky says there's no excuse for that behavior, but that it's not uncommon. It's one of the things he doesn't like about Hollywood. He says having women always throwing themselves at you and invading your personal space is scary. Melody sighed. So the women complain if a man touches them, even if it's just to put a hand on her back to escort her through a door. And the men are having to deal with that. Logan smiled. Well, it's not the same thing. Most men have no problem with women putting their hands on them, so there's that. That's just because of the loose morals of our fallen world. But also, men are stronger than women and could put a stop to it easily. So, it's not very manly to make a fuss about it. Still, there's a fine line male celebs have to walk. They have to gently rebuke any advances. If they hurt the female's pride, she could retaliate and make false accusations. And how often does that happen? Well, it happens a lot, according to Uncle Ricky and Toby Nash and Uncle Joey and now young Eric. So I guess that's what Mr. Kino means when he says Hollywood is not as fun and glamorous as people think. Right. And so when we go to this party, I will not be letting you out of my sight, and we will stay close to Eric and Jordan and be vigilant in keeping them safe. You keep them safe, and I'll be vigilant in keeping you safe from the clutches of adoring fans. He smiled. You do that, he said as they pulled into her driveway. He walked her to the door and took her in his arms and kissed her soundly. When he pulled away, he breathed a sigh. I could do this all night, every night. Me too, she murmured. I don't ever want you to stop. He sighed deeply and cupped her face in both of his hands. And that is why I need to. I haven't thought very much about young Eric and Jordan and Gabe and Taylor and how difficult it is to wait to be intimate and do things right. They've been battling this feeling a long time. I'm not sure I'm as strong as them. Me neither, Melody said softly. I mean, with Cade, I never even considered being intimate with him. Not even once. I let him kiss me goodnight. It was almost like a chore. Don't talk about him right now, he said gruffly. She giggled. Oh, sorry. So what you just said, Mel, you're thinking about being intimate with me? She sighed. I guess that's what I'm saying. I think about it. I pretend sometimes that. Her eyes opened wide as she realized what she was about to confess. Go on. Nope. He chuckled, bent down, and covered her mouth with his. When he pulled away, he smiled. No matter how much we might fantasize, I do want to do things right. I want God's blessing on our relationship, so I'm going to have to learn how to handle the strong urges I'm having. If you could have heard how Jake talked about his wedding night, how special it was, how God knows just what he's doing when he asks us to wait, how it makes the trust between the husband and wife and the special moments so amplified that it makes the union unbreakable. That's what I want for me, and it's also what I want for you. Logan, that almost sounds like a proposal. Well, let's be honest a moment, Mel. I don't know if that's where we'll end up, but I knew that's where I want to go in my life, and I date because I'm looking for the girl I'm going to share with my life with. So we'll see. So far, I'm super stoked that we're dating. Me too, she said shyly. He looked her over. You're so beautiful, Melody. You're so sweet. You're so strong. I love the way you take care of my little uncles and aunt and the way you help my grandmother. I love the way you decided to hand out backpacks to the homeless people. I love the way you are with your family and with my family. I like everything about you. He kissed her again, slowly and for a long time, and when he pulled away, he smiled at her. Good night, Melody. I'll see you tomorrow. He opened her front door and shoved her inside. New scene. It's December 6th, 12:30 p.m., Friday afternoon, the Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. And then, when I come back, little buddy, Gabe said as he nuzzled his tiny baby brother, you and me and little Jonathan Stewart over there, Gabe said, motioning with his head at the baby being held by his father, we're going to have a giant wrestling match. How long do you intend to be gone? Lizzie asked, because these guys are going to be too little to wrestle with for quite a while. Gabe grinned. Dad says he wrestled with me when I was only 6 months old. Lizzie frowned at her husband. Oh, man, you're in trouble now, Chaz Stewart laughed. Keegan frowned. Gabe, there are some things that are meant to only be information between us guys. Oops, sorry, Dad. He bounced little Isaiah and then looked back at his mother. Mom? How do you think I got to be so big and strong and good at everything? Dad had to start me in early, and that's what I'm going to do for my brother and for little Johnny over there, too. Taylor looked up from kissing on tiny little Gentian with a laugh. And he's so humble, too. Gabe chuckled. I'm not prideful, just confident. Taylor smiled as she rocked the baby in her arms. I just love these babies so much. Let me hold Gentian for a minute and you go get Lachlan from her mom, Bree said to her daughter. Taylor handed the tiny bundle over to her mother and went to Miss Lisa to get little Lachlan to hold. Bree smiled. Oh, my goodness. How can they all be so gorgeous? Ricky smiled and looked around at the current group in the Tanner home. They were having lunch at the Tanners and then would have dinner at the inn as a goodbye before they left to fly back to Cali in the morning. Right now, Keegan and Lizzie Tanner, their newest additions, Isaiah and Gentian, and little Iris, and Gabe and Taylor, and Daisy and Violet, and Lisa and Chaz, and their new additions, Jonathan and Lachlan, were all sitting around the large kitchen table. Charlie and Matthew and Erilyn Stewart were camped out at the kitchen island, and Rose was on her way home from the hospital. Lily Tanner and Melena Stewart were over at the inn helping out because Jody Apple had taken young Hannah Brown shopping for some clothes. Ricky loved this group of people as if they were his own. His father had always felt very close to what he called the East Coast family. In Ricky's mind, a finer group of people could not be found, and of course, he could add the Apples and Toby Nash's family to the list over here on the East Coast. He sighed. You okay, Rick? Keegan asked. He smiled and nodded. Yep. Just trying to take it all in. The next time I see these little ones, they won't be newborns anymore. And the next time I see Charlie or Matt or Erilyn, they'll look like they've grown into adults. Please don't say that about my little Erilyn, Lisa protested. Oh, really? Lizzie said. How long do you plan to be gone? Chaz chuckled. It happens fast. Ricky smiled. It really does. My little boy and little baby girl, where are they? Taylor made a face and looked at her father. Daddy, I'll always be your baby girl. Gabe smiled but thought hard about what they were saying. The little girl that was Ricky Kino's baby, is a high school senior who is ultra beautiful, ultra sexy, and contemplating being Gabe's wife and mother of his own children. Gabe looked over at his baby sisters, both Iris and the tiny Gentian. Maybe their lives will go by in the blink of an eye like everyone keeps saying. Gabe himself was thinking about how fast he'd gone through high school, and now it was simply over. He frowned. The circle of life was strange and fleeting. At least life as humans here on this earth. Life was precious, and these babies are precious, and they all knew and understood how precious they are. He thought about the young girl they found yesterday, Hannah Brown, and wondered if her parents thought she was precious when she'd been born. He wondered where everything went wrong for Hannah. They would know soon because Sheriff Ty was on his way over to talk to them about what they'd found concerning Hannah. Gabe looked down as Isaiah began to fuss. He smiled at the sweet cry of a new baby and then looked up at his mother. "I think he's hungry." Lisa smiled. "Yes, I think it's about that time." She rose. "Bring him into the den so I can sit in my chair and get comfy." "I think I'll go in with you," Lisa said. Gabe followed them in and gently handed his brother to his mom. "Can I get you ladies anything?" he asked. Lizzie smiled and Lisa laughed softly. "Gabe Tanner, I see why all the girls are in love with you." Gabe smiled. I just know that my dad always gets Mom some water when she's nursing." "Gabe is very observant," Lizzie said. "But no, sweetie, I don't need anything." "Lisa?" "Nope, I'm good. Thanks, Gabe." "You're welcome." He turned to leave the room. Sheriff Tyson knocked on the front door just as the new moms were getting comfortable in the den, and Gabe opened the door for him. "Hey, Sheriff Stewart." "Gabe," he said glumly. "Come on in. The men are in the kitchen." Ty came into the kitchen and nodded at everyone. He glanced around. "You men want to go in the living room?" "That bad, huh?" Keegan asked. Ty only frowned. "Kids," Chaz said, "come with me." "Dad, can I stay and hear what has to be said?" Charlie asked. Chaz looked over his oldest boy and nodded. He then led Matt and Erilyn into the den, where their mom and Aunt Lisa were nursing babies discreetly. "Ladies, Ty's here, and I think what he has to say isn't rated G. So, do you mind if the kids come in here and quietly watch a movie or something?" "No, we don't mind at all," Lizzie said. "Where's Iris?" "She's right here," Gabe said as he carried her in on his shoulders and swung her down to sit on the sofa with Matt and Erilyn. "Hey, Matthew, do you mind sort of watching these two girls for a bit? I'll make it up to you." "I don't mind," Matt said, "and you don't have to make it up to me." Gabe smiled. Matt, too, was growing up quickly. Goodness. Sheriff Ty, Chaz, Keegan, Ricky, Bree, Taylor, Gabe, Violet, Daisy, and Charlie made their way into the living room for privacy. They all sat quietly. Gabe and Charlie ended up sitting on the floor, and Sheriff Ty stood. "Okay, Ty, we're all ears," Chaz said softly to his younger brother. Ty nodded. "We went out to Beckett Trucking, and yes, that is where Carl Dietz works, or worked, because he won't be there anymore. He's actually been there for 5 years, never called in sick, worked hard, model employee. He went out for drinks with the guys most weekends. Several of his co-workers knew he had what they thought was a wife and kid. They also knew his wife left him with the kid. None of them had ever been out to his house. We got the address of a P.O. box from the employer, and after talking to the postmaster, found the location of the house." He stopped and shook his head. It was, like Hannah said, a yellow, dilapidated house in the middle of nowhere over in Barnes County. It took us all morning to process the scene. The chain and shackles that Hannah described was bolted to a floor in a closet with a small mattress in it. The chain stretched out from the closet we guess was her bedroom to the front room where we guess he unlocked the shackle to leave with her yesterday. DNA has been taken from every surface. Once that comes back, we'll have more of a story, but I'm pretty sure we'll find that he left evidence of his intentions on her mattress. Gabe frowned and glanced at Taylor to see if she understood what he was actually saying. It appeared she did. "Taylor," Gabe suddenly said, "do you want to go in the other room?" She blinked up at him and rose. "Yeah, I think I will." They waited for her to leave, and Ricky nodded at Gabe. "Good call." Gabe shrugged. "Oh, well, I know how I'm feeling." And she's so sweet and innocent, I didn't want this to affect her. Not without a cushion, anyway. I agree, Bree said. As a matter of fact, I think I'll go join the ladies, too. Ricky, you can fill me in later with that cushion. Ricky nodded solemnly. Tyson went on. We already know what she told the doctor at the hospital. He actually hasn't raped her yet, but he'd committed lewd acts and made her watch. The doctor's exam confirms that she's still intact. He sighed. We also got more information from Hannah through a psychiatrist that Grandmaster Kino recommended and was gracious enough to meet us at the hospital. We got a description of her mother's murder. Alicia Brown was her name. Hannah said it was night, and her mother was screaming at Carl, telling him that she was going to take Hannah and leave him. And they were outside on the front walk, and Hannah was watching out the window, and he hauled back and punched her square in the face. According to Hannah, she fell straight back, stiff as a board, like a tree falling, and smacked her head on the pavement. She lay flat on her back, her eyes open, staring straight up as blood ran out from under her head, and she never moved again. Hannah then saw Dietz kneel over her mother. He picked her up and carried her around the side of the house. She's not sure what he did with her after that. She says there's only woods around the whole house. She ran back to her bed, curled up, and cried. She was terrified and didn't know what to do. She says she guesses she cried herself to sleep, and the next morning he woke her up and told her that her mother left her in the middle of the night. She was too scared to confront him with the truth. Life from then on for the poor girl got a little worse every day. Sheriff Stewart, Gabe said quickly, do you know what Hannah's mom looked like? Do you have any pictures of her? Actually, yes. Why? Do you think you've seen her? No, sir. Well, I can't explain it right now, but can you describe her or show me a picture? Ty pulled out his phone and scrolled a moment. These are pics of a few of the pictures of her that were in the house, in the closet where Hannah slept. He handed his phone to Gabe. As Gabe stared at the pictures, Keegan asked another question. Did you find her real father? Yes, and that's just another heartache for this poor kid. Go on, Chaz said softly. He lives in Louisville, Kentucky. When Hannah was taken by her mom, they lived in West Virginia. Her mom was in a car accident and was in constant pain. She started on pain pills and couldn't get off them. Then she added alcohol to the mix, and she became pregnant and ended up losing the baby because of her addiction. She took Hannah and left one night after a huge fight with her husband. Hannah's father, Walter Brown, reported the abduction when it happened. We were able to trace him to Louisville. He's 35 years old, remarried, and has 2 children, a boy and a girl, ages 3 and 1. We contacted him. Apparently, the man has a new life, and he doesn't want anything to do with the old one, including his daughter. He doesn't want her, and he wants to sign away his rights to her. According to him, she's now damaged goods and probably unstable, and he simply cannot allow her to come into his new life and mess it up. He's sorry for Alicia, but says she brought it on herself. He's sorry for Hannah, but believes she'll be better off with someone else. Ty shrugged. I'm inclined to agree, simply because the poor kid needs to be with someone who actually cares about her. The room was full of tough, seasoned men and a few boys, namely Gabe and Charlie, and every single one of them had tears in their eyes. They all hurt for the small, frail, tender girl they'd met and felt very protective of her and wanted to fix it somehow, some way. Tyson drew a breath and went on. We're still searching for Alicia's body. We contacted the grandmother in Columbus. She's in a nursing home with an Alzheimer's diagnosis. Well, we'll adopt her, Ricky said quickly. Tyson nodded. I knew you'd say that, but hear me out. Jody and John Apple tried to have another child over the years, but were unable to. Jody's with Hannah right now, as you know, and if Hannah gets comfortable with her, while the Apples are fostering her, like she did with your family, Rick, would you consider allowing them to adopt her, if she wants to be adopted by them? Well, it's not up to me to allow or not allow, Ricky said. I realize that, but if the Apples thought for a moment that you and Bree wanted to adopt her, they would never stand in your way because, well, that's just the way they are. Ricky nodded. Of course, you're right. And I would never stand in their way. Have they already spoken to you about this? John has, but he doesn't want to even hint at it to Jody because he doesn't want her to get her hopes up and then have them dashed. I understand, Ricky said with a decisive nod. So, of course, let's give Hannah some time to see how she does, and let's encourage this pathway for her. Do you want to speak with Bree about this first before you say that? Ricky shook his head. I don't have to. I know she'll agree with me. Chaz put his hand on his son's shoulder. Charlie, you're very quiet. Are you okay? And do you understand everything we've discussed? I believe I do, he said softly. He shook his head. Thanks for allowing me to be here, to hear what the men were discussing. Well, you are in high school now. It's time to start treating you like a man. Charlie shook his head. It's hard to believe that someone would do that, what this guy did to Hannah. I mean, I can see him like accidentally killing her mom, like in a fit of anger or something. Like it wasn't planned, you know? But then, what he did to Hannah, or what he intended to do to her, it's just plain evil. It's sick. Chaz nodded. It's hard to believe, son. Hard to understand, but evil exists. The forces of darkness exist, and that's why God uses us to help fight that evil. Do you think he would have gone through with it? Charlie asked. I mean, do you think he really would have kept Hannah prisoner and then made her have his babies? I mean, that's totally a pervert. She's like younger than me. Gabe blew out a breath. Oh, he's totally a pervert. 'Cause like, he intended to do some things with me when he invited me into his truck yesterday, and I'm pretty certain those things were perverted. His mind is depraved, Gabe said. But how does someone get that way? Charlie asked. Well, it could be something like porn, Ricky answered. It's easily accessible, and people see it and think what's so bad about some naked pictures. But it turns into much worse. It gets to where guys can't get satisfaction without it. And then it has to be more and more deviant until it totally consumes them. There are serial killers who say that the only way they could achieve sexual satisfaction is when they actually killed someone. Well, that's just sick, Charlie muttered. It's Satan doing his work, Keegan answered. Don't let him in. Don't let there be a crack in your armor, and those cracks get there by using drugs and alcohol and looking at porn. It's a huge industry for a reason. We have to hold the light, Chaz said. Well, Ty said, I have to get back to work. I have a meeting with the Pine Forest Police and Barnes County Sheriff's Departments. As they saw Tyson out, Gabe cornered his father and Ricky. Dad, Mr. Kino, may I speak with you privately? Keegan nodded and then glanced at Ricky. Do you have time? Well, yes, of course, for Gabe, all the time in the world. Let's go into my office, Keegan suggested. I'm going to gather the family and head home, Chaz said. We want to go visit Jericho in the hospital, and then we'll see you guys tonight at dinner. They took time to say their goodbyes, and then Keegan, Ricky, and Gabe headed into the office. Gabe sighed as he thought about what he wanted to say. He had to smile as both men waited in silence. That's something his father always did, use silence to begin a conversation. It didn't surprise him that Mr. Kino did the same thing. He smiled. Well, I wanted to talk to you about the vision I had. I told you both about it. The one about Taylor, Ricky said. Gabe nodded. Yes, sir. And remember I told you I saw a big fist, a man's fist, hit her square in the face, and then I saw her lying on the pavement, eyes open, staring up like she was dead. And as Sheriff Stewart was telling us what Hannah saw the night her mother was murdered, I mean, it was like he was describing my vision. So I'm wondering if I got it wrong. Maybe it wasn't Taylor in my vision. Maybe what I saw was Hannah's mom, and I thought it was Taylor because Taylor is always on my mind, you know. And I looked at the pictures of Hannah's mom on Sheriff Stewart's phone, and she does have long dark hair, or I guess she did have long dark hair. I mean, I could have mistaken what I saw in the vision. Keegan sighed as he considered what Gabe was saying, and Ricky nodded. Of course, it's possible to misinterpret a vision or dream. When I was born, my father had a precognitive dream that I had a giant purple birthmark on my face. He was pretty distraught about it, but when I was born, they had to use forceps, and they left a large bruise on my cheek, which went away within the week. So he misinterpreted the dream, which tells me that yes, we definitely can misinterpret a dream or a vision. So we need to keep our minds open. Just don't draw any conclusions. What do you mean? I mean, don't draw a conclusion. Don't conclude that the vision must have been about Alicia Brown and not Taylor. Don't conclude that it was definitely about Taylor and not Alicia Brown. Keep it open. Maybe it was about both of them. Something in the past as a road mark that we're getting close to something similar happening in the future. Gabe frowned. Listen, I'd like to believe that you were simply mistaken about it being Taylor, but I can't write off your instincts. Gabe shook his head. My instincts? Yes, son, Keegan said. Your first instinct is that the vision was about Taylor. And instincts are like a knowing, like the Holy Spirit whispering to you. So we can't just write them off and conclude that your instincts were wrong. But what if it was just like I said? I mean, what if I thought it was Taylor because she's always on my mind? Ricky nodded. It's possible. Still, as close as you've been to Jesus, I mean, he's hugged you. So I'm inclined to trust your instincts. Gabe shook his head. Then I don't know what to think. Well, like I said, Gabe, don't think anything. Just keep your mind open to the possibilities and draw no conclusions. You don't have to choose what to think. Draw no conclusions. Listen. Trust God. He'll let us know when the time comes. Until then, we'll still take extra precautions to keep her safe. Gabe nodded. He drew a quick breath and closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were moist, and he smiled at Ricky. Did you just get a message or something? Keegan asked. Gabe nodded. Yes, sir. I didn't get a vision, but I just heard a voice, or actually just the words came into my head. What did it say? Who was it? Keegan asked. It was Jesus. And it was a message. For you, Mr. Kino. Ricky's eyebrows rose. Okay. Gabe sniffed. He said he's hugged you too, many times. He said he's proud of you and he loves you. Ricky's eyes immediately teared up, and Gabe went on. He says he loves us all and for us to stay close to him in everything we do and keep our lamps filled through prayer and song and his word and by continuing to serve his sheep and build his kingdom. And the world will come against us, but don't despair. He's overcome the world. Gabe stopped as his voice became choked with emotion. He's coming. Hold on. And that is the end of chapter 1.